Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce this afternoon's panel, Global Growth, the Future of Jobs and Economic Outlook. It's a true privilege to be a part of the movement and dialogue around the next generation of leadership and witness the firsthand impact that leaders have not only on the organizations they lead, but also on the global economy. For many of us in the room today, including myself, we share a passion and purpose of creating leadership for a better world. And we challenge ourselves constantly to bring diverse thinking and perspective to every engagement. Because the future of jobs starts with those we call leaders today. As we continue the positive economic momentum into the year and open opportunities within job markets, I urge us all to critically think about the role we play in accelerating leadership with global growth. Whether it's challenging our established practices, looking beyond labels and stereotypes, or changing the traditional model to account for potential rather than leadership experiences, we must remember that long-term systemic change cannot happen without a collective change in mindset. To help us continue the dialogue, I'd like to give a very warm welcome to the panel's distinguished moderator, Mikołaj Kinuka.
Thank you very much for very short but precise introduction. So we will be talking about the future of jobs and economy. Great, I love economy. And before we started, I got a hot news for you. We just entered a new era. The name of the era, you know what it is? Tramponomics. Tramponomics. And what's the most important rule of tramponomics? Unpredictable. Yeah. So it's a similar like being here in Davos. Yeah. Yesterday morning we got a -13. This morning we got like +2. And this is the most important you have to know about the principal rule of the new era. But it's not all. We just started 2 years ago, I guess, traveling in economy on a completely new orbit and new trajectory. New agents appear on the labor market. And the name of them is, some say AI agents, some say human agents, others say alien agents. So it's very interesting in how it reshape not only economy and labor market, but also does it diminish the role of women, for example, on the labor market, or it's a tool to help them. So this is I think, the structure of our discussion, but we will see when we arrive after 30 minutes. Please welcome our special guest, the panelists, Konstanz Schweinsteiger, Partner Supervisory Board, Roland Berger, Helen Giza, CEO, Fresenius Medical Care, and Cynthia Hansen, Managing Director of the Innovation Foundation, empowered by Adecco Brook. So start from the money, and talk for a while about the gap parity in the labor force. As we know from many studies, one of them created by also Economic Forum, that the gender parity in the labor forces could add $12 trillion to global GDP. 12 trillion. Wow. So let's talk about that money. How, if that's so, I got a question to all of you. Maybe we start from Cynthia. What specific policy and initiative have proven most effective in supporting women to participate heavy in a workforce?
Thank you. So I was actually looking back at some stats that actually match with what you're saying, because we look at women being 50% of the population, but then when you look at women's participation in the workforce, it ends up dropping down to about 68%, and then you start to layer on other things when you talk about intersectionality. So if you then look at women who are in family units where you've got extended family and you have young children, then it drops down, I'm reading this because I'm right, it drops down to 55%. And then if you actually look at that demographic in emerging markets, it drops down to 44%. So my question is, all of these women who could be in the workforce, making money, being engaged, being consumers, generating tax revenue, we're missing huge, huge numbers of people. And so we've looked at, in the Innovation Foundation, in our Women Back to Work project, specifically at among women who have left the workforce or fallen out of the workforce, who's fallen out, why are they not coming back in? And it's usually women at that threshold of, maybe I have a high school diploma, but I don't have a university degree. I can work a job that is semi-skilled, but it's going to be hard to move up. I don't qualify for those returnship programs, but I need to work. I want to work, but I need to work in a way that works for me. I need to flex around my other responsibilities. And therefore, I need employers who will work with me rather than trying to shoehorn me into what they think I should be doing. So back to the policy thing, we need policies that incentivize companies or employers of all types to be more human-centric, and then companies and employers need to then change their policies internally and the behaviors and culture that go with it to be more human-centric.
To be more human-centric, I think, is one of the notes we should keep in mind after this discussion. That would be, let's say, the first point. Helen, what's your opinion? What's your advice? Could you share us with some good practices, good examples?
Yeah, happy to do so, and thank you for having me today. Look, I believe a commitment to intentionality and representation will always outweigh policy. And I think that is probably never more important than what you just spoke about, particularly with the unpredictability maybe with some of the walking away from some of these efforts that we've recently heard from Trump in like literally the last 24 hours on DEI. And look, I think for, my view here is that when we do have that representation and the numbers are there and it's visible and we're embracing it, I think that's naturally going to lead to more inclusion, more retention, and keeping people in the workforce. I run the world's largest renal care company, and I'm in healthcare. And yeah, likewise, the stats are staggering. In the global healthcare workforce alone is 65 million people, and 70% of healthcare roles are women. Yet only 25% of those global leadership roles are held by women. So I think that's also important. It's like we can get the women into the workforce. In some industries, they are greatly represented. But how do we help them stay in the workforce and aspire into those leadership roles? I think we can also see that the level of roles in healthcare does decrease as, that kind of the time that they are in their industry. But healthcare still outperforms other industries. At Fresenius Medical Care, we have 120,000 roles globally, and because we're in healthcare, we do have 70% women. And I'm glad to say I'm above the average of 25% leadership roles. We're about 34% leadership roles. But I think that's my point. It's not about that being a policy. That is about leaders being intentional about the work they do to not just attract female talent in, but to retain it and keep it engaged so they stay and they can develop.
Thank you. But listening to you, what comes to my mind is that in the new, let's keep this term, era, we should be more agile to create the workspace, not only for women, but if you would like, and we do, to inspire women, attract women to go into the higher positions, to be more engaged to the job market. I think, Constance, that we should be more agile to create that new reality, because other way, for example, coming back to the market after, for example, pregnancy and the break, it wouldn't work.
That's true, Nikolai, but I think there has been some major changes over the past year due to Corona, actually, so everyone will agree that a lot has changed in terms of agility, of flexibility, of more home office, of remote work. That is a great advantage, especially for women. But why is it an advantage especially for women? Because women usually have this double burden of being a caretaker in their families, or having care obligation in their families, or being the ones to be addressed once care comes up. And they have the need to earn money, because usually a one-income family is not really working anymore, at least in Western countries. So this double burdening is a stretch for most women that is very difficult to overcome, and I think we just heard some of the examples. It oftentimes starts from early on with an early child. You have difficulties to finalize a higher education, and that follows up the entire ladder. So I think the potential we see, and you just mentioned the trillions of dollars, we should see as a double-fold coin, because we have to find answers for who does the caretaking jobs if we have all those women 40 hours engaged in full-time demanding jobs. And I think that's part of the truth, and we have to find answers to that, and that's not easy. In the end, I think we do good if we offer flexibility and choice. And I think it would be good if we do not form a new normative, like we all have to work forever for 40 hours a week, because I think this isn't fitting to everyone. Women, but also some men reject that these days. And that goes to the employers, to all of us, to become more flexible and be more in a discussion and see how can we come up with new models, how can we arrange more individual. We individualize health, we just heard in the previous panel, and the expectation will be there that everyone expects to be treated more individual. So have to find answers to that, and it's not easy. Talking from a corporate perspective.
Cynthia, want to comment?
If I could just jump in on that. So one of the things we found post-COVID was that the kinds of flexibility being offered by employers were not what employees wanted. And so things like, we'll give you unlimited paid time off, but you can't use it more than 1 week a year. Or there are crazy things like that. Or we'll let you do home office, but only on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that doesn't fit with my childcare schedule. So I think what companies are coming to, I hope, is that you have to design from the bottom up with people and think about the unintended consequences. So this is all about systems thinking. So if you want more women to work outside of the office who does the caregiving, and then if you have a burden on caregiving, then you don't have enough caregivers. And so everything has these consequences, and you're not thinking about what happens, you're just trying to fix one little part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it also adds to that, though, because it's, even when you look at your female population, or any population for that matter in your company, it's not one size fits all, right? I have, maybe it will get replaced with AI in the future, but today, as I talk about the number of female workers, many of those are frontline workers running a clinic, and seeing patients all day, every day. Will that get replaced with AI in the future? We'll see. But I can't do a work from home policy for them. Now, my office people love it, a work from home and flexibility, and the return to office is a hot topic. Some companies are giving mandates, others you're trying to get bottom up feedback of what do you want. So I do think there's also a message here of flexibility, not one size fits all, and tailor-making specific policies for the type of employee populations you have. And that's hard to do on a global scale.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the first of all, reality is we are in a post-COVID, and we are in an era of AI, but our education system, it's not adjusted to this change. So let's open the chapter dedicated to reskilling, because again, data shows that women in reskilling programs can increase workplace productivity by more or less 30%. Yeah. So what inclusive training initiative could be implemented effectively? To address the barriers which today women see with a process of reskilling. What do you think?
So there is a lot of upskilling and reskilling out there, not all of it good. I think one of the dangers is right now it's often decoupled from the traditional education system, and it's decoupled from what the market actually needs. And so I think to answer your question, what you really need is a more joined up approach that actually links what's being taught in schools from primary up through university. Also that there are multiple pathways. It's not university for everyone. And you're actually training people not for the skills that today's jobs need, but projecting what the skills of tomorrow might be. But I think more than anything, it's about teaching particularly young people, everybody, to be more agile, to learn differently, to then value the skills that you get from outside traditional education. So we've got this project called Youth at Risk in Mexico that basically we developed a tool that translates the lived experience of teenage mothers into skills and competencies that would be recognized by an employer. So those are skills that would not be recognized through traditional certification, but you can actually then put that into your portfolio of things that you bring to the table.
The thing is, do we need systematic covering whole economy in one country, or it should be this concentrated and focus on purpose here at this time?
I very much support the cause that it really needs to be corporate related. Because in the end, reskilling, upskilling that leads to no job, that is well paid, doesn't do anyone any good. It's just a way of keeping women busy and making statistics look good. There's too much at stake and at risk. And you just mentioned, Nikolai, with the AI, what does that mean to the future of jobs? At Roland Berger, I'm with a strategy consultancy and engaging a lot into people and organizations. So it's one of my focuses to discuss the future of jobs under AI. And what we see is that a lot of repetitive jobs will disappear. Now, repetitive jobs are the ones that offer you stable hours. So what do you think? A number of women, no surprise, will have jobs with that profile. So they are really at risk. And the corporates should really take the momentum to, at this point in time, because AI will run very fast, and it's now to act as a corporate, to understand I have a lot of potential in my in my organization, and if I start to train now and to identify which will be the jobs at risk, then I can keep this talent, I can keep the loyalty that women usually have to their employers, and skill them up to a concrete next job and position, and also maybe think about careers at that place. And that, Helen, really, it's, as you mentioned, it's about leadership. I was kind of supporting the policy thing in the previous session, because I really truly believe we also need to follow up and to put into transparency and to set goals. But ultimately, it's leadership. And the way we lead, it's not only education at this stage, but it's also our leadership style that is not really up to the challenge. That's at least my observation. Helen, maybe you have...
No, that really resonates. And look, I think this point about intentionality and representation is so key. No matter where you are, people want to look at an organization and see someone they can identify with. And I, every single day, feel the power and the responsibility, and also stress actually, of I'm a female CEO running a global company, and women in my organization are looking up and saying, in their mind I'm on a pedestal, but at the other time they're like looking and saying, how did she get there? So being able to tell your own personal story, and being able to kind of show like the path that you went through. And I don't think any of us really have traditional paths, so opening up people's minds to what those paths have been and the struggles. I'm a working mom. Sometimes I say, if you want anything done, give it to a busy working mom, because I think our ability to the skill set we have, our ability to multitask and do get things done. But I have a 14-year-old teenage son, and he's in freshman in high school. And talking about the jobs of the future, I mean, it's been a very real experience for me at home right now, when I'm home. But he's like, Mom, I have to pick my classes for, literally for for going to college, and he's like, the school mom is offering me, if I start and it was fascinating, cybersecurity class now in my sophomore year, so that's year 2 of high school, for the not from the US, and I do 3 years of cyber, I'll get an internship at the end of it. And he was excited to think, I can get an internship. And I know we're talking about women, but I think it's challenging for kids no matter where they are, particularly coming out of the COVID age. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh, holy crap, cybersecurity in 8 years' time when you graduate college, I don't know that we'll be dealing with that because AI will have replaced that. But I think, my message then is, Caleb, you can't make a wrong choice. You've got to get don't pigeonhole yourself. Keep your options open as much as possible. And I think that's what kids have to think about is, how do I get the basic education? How do I get a grounding? How do I get exposed to many things? And how can I not make a wrong choice so I can make choices later? And I think that pressure on that younger generation, I'm sure you see this all the time, is so real that they're like, okay, I want to be a doctor, I have to do X, Y, and Z. But I think many of us would say we got to where we were from not pigeonholing ourselves and keeping options open. And I think that's the message we can send to the next generation.
I love that. 2 very important points. I heavily agree. First of all, a personal example. This is absolutely crucial role to inspire not only a woman but to inspire employees everywhere. So this is, I think, crucial one. And the second point, if you don't know what to do, talk to your kids. This is how I operate, because they are the future, we are thinking as a leaders. We have to think about the future. Yeah? And for example, I observe how my teenagers consume the media in completely different way. They never been on the website of my outlet, never, and they will never been. So I have to ask them how to transform my business. I have to know where they will be when they be on the market. So if I ask him who you want to be, digital nomad. There's no academic way such a school. Digital nomad. Okay, you got a couple of minutes, and this would be, I think, the most interesting round, because the question about the money and the gender pay gap. Yeah, you agree that it's the...
That hurts.
Okay, so let's start to talk about it. What's the highest barrier to which create those gender pay gap? Because if we know what's an obstacle, we can know how to tackle.
Exactly. I don't think there's one. So actually, I think there are 4, and you will maybe agree, maybe not. Access types of jobs, ability to negotiate, which is also tied in with culture, and transparency. So it's not just one, and it goes back to systems, right? You can't just fix one of those things without everything else moving. But the thing that actually gives me hope is this coming wave, I hope it's a sea change, towards skills-based hiring. If you start to actually price what the worth of the job is, and then look at, can this person do that job, or can this person be trained into that job? What's the potential? I think you can actually get around some of those other things, because then it becomes more data-driven and maybe less culture-driven, and culture will follow.
Okay, so if it's all 4 barriers, so how to approach to this challenge? Because fighting against 4 threats is very, very hard. So, but maybe there is no other ways. We have to. Should we choose one and start to do better on that field, or we are responsible to says stop to all of them? What would be your approach?
I agree with the comment on transparency. I'm also a firm believer in what you can only measure, what you can report, right? So you have to measure the data. I think it's a call to action. As you know, as a leader, I don't think about the gender pay gap in my own company. You get paid for the role, and whether you're a male or female, it should not matter. You want to pay the best person for the job and the rate for the job. Now, I'm not naive enough to think it doesn't exist. And I think we have to put action behind that transparency. And I think this could be an area of one where policy might help in terms of visibility of the data, auditing of the data. But I think it's all of our roles to continue to educate on the gap and on the challenge, and do something about it. It's our job as industry leaders to do something about it. And particularly in big organizations where side by side you have males and females occupying similar jobs, there is no excuse for a gap. And more companies have to do that.
I agree. I think I agree that transparency is a key. And I think it should start before you're in the company. It should start at the process of hiring people, because that open everything.
I think everything is true what we were discussing, but there is also a before. There is the underselling of women. A lot of us are not really good in really knowing their market value and really making a point out of it and really go for the job. So we need always this 100% security. You probably all heard about it. So that's part of the issue. But there's another thing that also is I think starting from early on, and that starts in the families. Are girls allowed to dream high? And do they have the role models, not abstract in some corporate, but also within the families? Are they encouraged also by their fathers, by their brothers, whoever is around?
I would jump in here, because I don't know how in other culture, but in Europe, it's not a cultural way to discuss in the family about the salaries levels, even between the closest person in the family. So
exactly. So in Europe, it's close to not allowed. You do never talk about salaries, and then also if you look into what are the industries that women tend to choose, to pick and choose, then you can see it's the low wage industries. So there's numbers of reasons. It is within the corporates, and definitely we should stand up for that, and we should take over responsibility, and it shouldn't happen. But it's also starting earlier on, and it's part of the education, it's part of the family jobs for everyone who's dealing with young girls, also with young boys, to open their perspectives and allow for choice. I think we mentioned choice many times.
Absolutely.
And really, liberation and choice is the thing here.
So if I would sum up this final round, of course we are very far from giving the recipe. We just touched the issue. But I think that we need to cooperate in a matrix model, including an inclusive business, administration, and society. So we agree at the end of our discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.